Also, joining us now, Nick Freitas, House of Delegates member from Virginia. He's a Republican. Nick is also one of 3 announced candidates running for United States Senate, and he is vying for the Republican nomination to go up against Tim Kaine in November of 2018. That'll be coming up pretty soon. There'll be a primary in June. The other 2 candidates in the race, the favorite, Prince William County Chairman Corey Stewart, who lost narrowly the Republican nomination, as you know, to Ed Gillespie in the June 2017 primary. 3 candidates in that race, and also the Bishop, E.W. Jackson, he has announced also, and of course, Nick Freitas. Great to have you with us, Nick.
Hey, great to be on, John. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so look, Trump denying the language used yesterday. He said that he was taken out of context. He tweeted out, he says, the language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not what I said. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback for DACA. If you were in the U.S. Senate, Nick, right now, the president has laid out an immigration reform plan that includes a pathway for the 800,000 DACA applicants to stay in the United States, and that includes securing the southern border with a wall, getting rid of the 50,000 annual scam lottery visas that make no sense. That's what we just talked about. And the third thing is reforming the immigration system so that it becomes a merit-based system and ending chain migration. If you were in the Senate now, would you back that or not?
No, I would, John, and I think the reason why is this, is that the Democrats proved in the 80s that it's really difficult to deal with them in good faith on any compromise. So my only concern is I want to make sure that all the measures that the president has laid out in order to achieve border security and to achieve effective immigration reform are realized before we go any farther on compromises with the Democrats. Because, again, they've already demonstrated that they gain politically from having this as a problem. They haven't found a way to gain from being a part of the solution. But I think this is a very reasonable compromise on behalf of the president, and I would support it.
Okay, so you're in favor of that. Now, what is your reaction to the this is, obviously dominating the news cycle. You're running for Senate. I have to ask it. So what was your reaction to the various news media saying what Trump said yesterday after one of his bipartisan meetings about why are we taking in people from these countries, and he used colorful language? What was your reaction to that, Nick?
Well, quite frankly, I don't really know what comment the president made, and I don't really trust the media to accurately report on this president. And that really is a shame. I wish I could believe that when the media reports something about Donald Trump, they're doing so accurately and fairly. But they've already set up a track record for doing everything they possibly can to undermine the administration, to include using information that I think is either false or taken out of context. So what I've heard the president say time and time again when it comes to substantive policy positions is that we should have a merit-based system. A merit-based system is based off of the individual, not the country you're coming from. And I think that's what we should do. We shouldn't be saying you're not allowed to come to the United States if you're coming from a particular country. It should be based off of the merits of the individual and whether or not that individual wants to come and contribute and be a part of American society. And I think that's a good policy position. With respect to the comments, again, the president says he didn't make the comments the way it was reported. I'm inclined to believe him, again, because this media has taken almost a tabloid approach to covering this administration.
Yes, look, there's no question, and you have to get beyond some of the comments made and get to the substantive policy issues. Don Lemon on CNN last night went on about a 5-minute rant when he got on the show, basically saying that the president's a racist and everybody that backs him is a racist and everybody that voted for him is a racist, everybody that defends him is a racist. I'm not a racist. I just believe in his policies. Is the left going off the rails with this, Nick?
Well, I think for a while now, again, not every Democrat, right, but certainly Democrat leadership and many people within the far left have realized that it's an effective strategy that anytime they disagree with you, they simply accuse you of either bigotry or racism or sexism. And then we find ourselves in a position where we've got to constantly convince everyone that, no, that's not what we believe. I'm so tired of that. I'm obviously not a racist. You're obviously not a racist. There's nothing racist about saying we should have a merit-based system. And again, a merit-based system is not predicated on what country you come from. It's predicated on your individual merits and contribution to American society. We want people to come to this country. We want people to want to become Americans and contribute to that. But again, this goes back to the media lets them get away with it. They accuse Republicans of being racist, or they accuse conservatives of being racist or bigoted. And then the media doesn't say, prove that. They then look at a Republican or a conservative and say, are you? And it's insulting. It's absolutely insulting. And quite frankly, let's just take a quick stroll through history here, okay? The Republican Party was the party of emancipation. The Republican Party was the party that fought for women's suffrage against Democrats. It was the Democrat administration as late as the 30s that put 100,000 American citizens in concentration camps without due process of law. It was Democrat administrations that imposed Jim Crow laws. So I'm so tired of this idea that Republicans have got to constantly convince everyone that we're not racist when we're not the party that has a history of it. So it's frustrating as someone like me I wasn't raised racist. I've never been racist. I've always lived in communities and interacted with people of all different races. So it's frustrating, but it's a narrative that we've got to get used to combating because it's been around for a while, and unfortunately Democrats have seen a lot of success with using that narrative.
It's an easy and convenient argument when you can't articulate the policies and the policies that you're promoting with a country that has $20 trillion in debt and is going bankrupt makes no sense. So it's a very easy argument to fall back on. Now, this just breaking, the Chrysler company, Fiat Chrysler, Nick Freitas going to invest over $1 billion to modernize a Michigan plant. This is in addition to a previous $1 billion investment in the plant. It's going to add 2,500 new jobs in Michigan. And Chrysler says they're going to give $2,000 bonuses to 60,000 of its hourly and salaried employees in the U.S. because of tax reform. This is vintage Trumponomics. Remember, it was Chrysler who took their plant to China to make their Cadillacs and then shipped them back to the U.S. through the port of Los Angeles without a tariff, screwing U.S. workers. This is one of the things that Trump has been railing against forever. Now we're seeing it come into play. Chrysler going back to Michigan. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Nick Freitas, House of Delegates member from Virginia. He's also one of 3 Republicans running for the U.S. Senate. He wants to be the nominee to be able to run against Tim Kaine, the Democrat incumbent in Virginia in 2018. The other 2 Republicans announced in that race, Bishop E.W. Jackson and the favorite Prince William County Chairman and former candidate for governor, Corey Stewart. So, Nick, Trumponomics, black and white, $1 billion in Michigan, 2,500 jobs. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think it's common sense that these sort of policies work. When you make it cheaper to do business in the United States, companies have less of an incentive to move their companies overseas. And unfortunately, Democrat policy for as long as I can remember has been higher taxes and more regulations. And it's always done in the name of consumer safety, but I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. More and more what we see is Democrats engaging in a kind of economic policy which centralizes control in the hands of government bureaucracies, not in the hands of customers, consumers, producers, entrepreneurs. So when Trump's tax policy passed, and now all of a sudden we have an environment where people get to keep more of what they earned, it's cheaper to do business in the United States, it just makes sense that businesses want to stay in the United States. They don't want to ship their factories 8,000 miles away. But when Democrat policies make it impossible to make a profit in the United States, what do you expect a business to do? And likewise, when you make it to where you can appreciate that profit in the United States, when you can hire more U.S. workers because we've removed those regulatory and tax burdens, well, of course they're going to stay here. So I'm not surprised. I think it's great that for the last several months, Democrats have been terrifying the country that this was going to be a horrible tax policy. And right off the bat, we're seeing economic benefits for people along the entire economic spectrum. Again, as expected, when you have common sense tax and regulatory reform, you're going to get results like this. So it's very encouraging.
I'm very excited about it. And this really is the core of Trumponomics. And this is why, despite all what the media is doing to him, I think he's going to get reelected in 2020 because he's bringing jobs back in a huge way. Now, Nick, I got to just ask you a question that has been troubling many of us in Virginia. When you look at the numbers of the 2017 election and the depth of the Democrats' victory. One thing that really, Nick, jumps out at you is the number of millennials that have abandoned the Republican Party, don't like Trump, and voted for the Democrats. Now, you look at the lieutenant governor's campaign, and I don't think he did anything quite inspiring for millennials. But if Republicans can't attract younger people to their causes, that really for the future spells electoral disaster. How does Nick Freitas repair that? How do you reach out to younger people and get them excited about what we're attempting to do?
Well, I would say we're already way ahead of our goals right now and what we anticipated we would have as far as volunteers from the millennial generation. So whether it's college students or whether it's younger people in their 20s, whatnot, we're seeing just, I can't tell you how many people from the millennial generation that want to come in and help this campaign. And the reason why is we're addressing issues which are important to millennials, but they're conservative approaches. Now, in many cases, you don't go in and say, okay, hey, I'm a Republican, and here's the Republican approach. Sometimes you just go in and say, look, do you really trust a government bureaucracy to engage in crony capitalism in order to pick winners and losers in the economy? Is that what you want for your future? No, of course they don't. Do you want government manipulating the college loan program in such a way to where it creates increasing prices and decreasing quality? No, of course they don't. Do they want more control over their retirement and over their job future? Absolutely. Well, when we offer the solution as empowering people, not empowering bureaucracies, not empowering politicians, not empowering those businesses that are politically connected, but providing a playing field within a free market economy, that appeals to millennials. The other thing, too, that we've done, I think, a very good job on, and we're going to continue to do, and again, this is conservative, is we're going to say that the job of the Republican Party, as I see it, is to be advocates for individual liberty. You should be free to pursue happiness in accordance with your definition of happiness, not the government's, right? Insofar as you are not violating someone else's right to do the same. And what that means is necessarily pulling government out of certain decisions which it's imposed itself in and making everyone freer as a result. You know, again, regardless of who you are, regardless of who your parents are, regardless of skin color, regardless of gender, you're going to be freer under our policy positions. That's an appealing position. We just have to make good on it. And I think with tax reform, I think with regulatory reform, I think with other things coming up, in 2018, it's going to be a different world because now our congressmen, our senators, they're going to be able to run on actually governing and getting things done, not just the promise of getting things done. And I really think that's going to be a game changer in 2018.
Well, let's hope so, Nick. Now, look, you look at just the Republican Party of Virginia, everybody is always fighting with each other. It's kind of dispiriting, Nick, candidly, because Virginia Republicans are on a 10-game statewide losing streak. They're worse than the Cleveland Browns. They can't win a game, and yet you have these factions constantly at war with each other, which is not helpful. How does a Nick Freitas for Senate candidacy unite these disparate warring factions within an already fractured Republican Party of Virginia?
Well, I mean, the first step is don't engage in the circular firing squad, right? That's what Republican politics in Virginia has become. And I'll tell you, almost every time I get an interview from the media, the first thing they want me to do is say something bad about Corey Stewart or say something bad about E.W. Jackson, and I won't do it. I'm going to talk about what we believe in and what we hope to accomplish with respect to policy positions. That's step one. But I got to tell you, John, one of the things that's been really encouraging is when people were first encouraging me to run, there was a Facebook page that was set up to draft me to run for office. And there were two people that joined it almost immediately and said that I would be their candidate. And what was interesting was these two people do not get along. They constantly fight with one another. They're in different factions within the Republican Party. And they could not believe they were on the same side. But again, it's that liberty message, right? It's not focusing on using the government to impose a particular policy on one group of people or another group of people. It's the effort to make all people as free as possible and secure as possible and prosperous as possible. That is a winning message. So the tone we're going to use is going to be one of reconciliation within the Republican Party combined with absolute passion and an unapologetic defense for what it is that we believe. And if we can do that, and I think we have been, we're going to unite these various factions within the Republican Party, and we're already seeing it even this early in the campaign.
Nick, I respect what you're attempting to do. And hopefully Republicans in Virginia, regardless of who the nominee is, can come together and wage a substantive, merit-based, informational policy campaign and have a solid debate with Tim Kaine. But this constant, like you said, a circular firing squad, I'm sick of it. It's of no value. That's why I'd never go on Facebook except to post our stuff. It's horrible. All they want to do is fight with each other. And it's like, what are we fighting over? We can't win. We're 0 for 10. We haven't won a statewide, and it's getting worse, right? The numbers are getting bigger. Just doesn't make any sense. Somehow Republicans in Virginia have to come together and knock it off. But thanks for being with us. I'm out of time. Nick Freitas. Nick, what's your website?
NickForSenate.com, and please visit us on Facebook and Twitter.